Hello everyone, and welcome to this JDE Customer Online Update. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you do wish to ask a question, it'd be great if you could change if you're logged in anonymous to who you are, so we can see what's going on and what questions you're asking. And also on the by chance that we don't get to answer your questions during this session, so that we can get back to you after. So jumping in, normally I would be standing in front of a large portion of you in Melbourne at our Innovation Symposium. Unfortunately, with the world that we're in at the moment, that's not the case. So we've now transitioned to this live event and doing an update for this quarter. So I just want to welcome everyone. And I know it's either morning, afternoon, evening, or even early morning, because we have people from about 15 countries joining us on this session today. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time to go through this. Yes, this session is being recorded, and we'll provide an update to a copy of this out to everyone that registered for today's session. A little bit about what's going on. So currently I will be doing the introduction and welcome, which we're running through at the moment. We'll then jump into our Director of JD Edwards and Innovation, Shannon Moyer, will talk to you about how to gain insights into your ERP. Hopefully, and this is one of the technical issues, we may have to change the order. I'm just working behind the scenes with Gary and Bob to get their sessions up and going. Really great and privileged to have them on board to give us a JDE keynote. Normally, this would have been last month. A few of us would have been in America to attend to collaborate. We would have got all the key updates from what's happening with JD Edwards. Unfortunately, that event wasn't on, but there was an online sessions, and there were three key notes that were run from that. So Bob and Gary are going to give us a condensed version of that, plus look at a couple of focus points. So it's really exciting to have both of them on board. We're then going to jump into a presentation from one of our functional consultants, Jenny, and our consulting manager, Ben, who are going to talk about some options and what you can do with testing automation. I'll then jump back on board and start talking about some data protection from fraud. We'll then open it up to Q&A. So any questions that have come from the sessions, we can go from there, and then we'll close out and talk about some of the other events that we're looking at for the remainder of 2020. With this, the focus that I always have, and in our relationships and Fusion 5 with our relationships, whether it's with JD Edwards themselves or our partners around the world, is it's all about collaboration. People have seen me get up and speak. This was going to be our third year of the symposium. We're still hoping to run that later this year, but it's all focused on working together as a group. So I really wanted to put this in here, and this is what this is all about, and subsequent sessions like this throughout 2020, and we'll keep these rolling through 2021 and on. It's all about collaboration. So off the back of this, for whether you're a JD Edwards customer, whether you use Fusion 5 or not, whether you're a partner or actual vendors that we have on the call, I really appreciate any feedback and thoughts about how we can do this best and improve things for the JD Edwards customer base in APAC. One thing I did want to flag is it's a bit of a statement we've been using, and it's something that I've put up over the last couple of years, is particularly since the release of 9.2, is one of the main things is that JD Edwards is always changing. There's continual releases, there's continual updates, the enhancements, the improvements, and everyone has seen the journey of JD Edwards from whether it was what some people are used to with the B7.3 versions back in the 90s through to the 8.12 to 9 to 9.1 to 9.2. There's always been a change, and there's always been a change for the better. The product is always continually improving. But with that in mind, the big thing that also is, it used to be about the digital world is changing with JD Edwards, but now it's really the world itself is changing JD Edwards and everything that links with it, whether it's because of COVID-19. So the example is, we would normally be running the symposium, but we're running a live event. Some organizations have gone to full work from home strategy. Some people have had to decrease their employee base. They've had to rethink of how they do their operations. Some businesses have gone forward because of the industry that they work in. Some are struggling. So this world has made an impact on everyone, and we're having to do things differently. And I'm hoping that through this session and through subsequent sessions that, you know, there's a couple of key things that will hopefully help and provide insight and actionable items for the JD Edwards customer base, particularly across the APAC region. And the four things that really are the focus point for this session today are to learn about what is new with JD Edwards and where's JD Edwards is going. Yes, there have been some big announcements made last month with the product set, and there is a lot of new functionality and capabilities that are going with 9.2. But when I look at the next three on top of that, if you're looking at, you know, where areas that your business can benefit, whether it's getting better insights into what is actually happening with your ERP. I spoke about it before, where your businesses could be moving to a work from home strategy. It could be 100%, it could be partially, depending where on your world, what controls are put in place. In Australia, that our states are running on different rules. So we can do different things. We normally I had customers that I would go and see every 2 or 3 weeks. But I know that now it's still potentially another 2 months or so before I can go see them because I have to cross borders. So it's really looking at what you can do with your solution and what's actually happening. Is it still performing the same way it was before March 13? The second one is looking at automation and how you can take automation, particularly in the testing space, and look at cost reductions. You know, particularly as you move into continuous delivery and continuously embracing the adoption of 9.2 and looking at staying updated release. So what you can do from there. And the third one is, you know, now that because you're having many people have a remote workforce, you need to put a little bit more controls into place. You're not having people sitting in the office with each other. So you need to look at controlling your master data a little bit more. And, you know, there's more potential opportunity for fraud to occur. So we'll look at that. So they're the four things. It's really about trying to provide information to each of you about what is there to help you either look at your total cost of ownership and producing some return of investment with your JD Edwards, or at the end of the day, just get a better understanding of what's happening in this world that has completely changed it for everyone. So the end of my little bit, cut this a little bit short to try and make up a little bit of time. But the goal for me with any of these events is that collectively, whether it's myself, whether it's Fusion 5, whether it's JD Edwards themselves, it's any of our partners that we align with, together we're here to innovate, support, and work with each other. We do smaller user groups, so even if it's about connecting customers to customers, you know, it's all about we're here to align everyone across this region, and if need be, we can go outside of the region, and particularly with the ability through groups like Redfare International that connect, you know, 12 partners across the globe, you know, have the ability to reach out and see what other customers are doing or get you insights into what others are doing. That's the goal of today. So please, during this, if you have any questions, let us know. If we do miss anything, please be sure that someone will get back to you off the back of this session, along with providing a recording. Okay, with that, I'd now like to hand over to our Director of JD Edwards and Innovation, Shannon Moyer.
Fantastic, thanks, Andrew. So I'm here to talk about what we've done with ERP Analytics, and quite specifically how we've been able to adapt ERP Analytics to show exactly what Andrew's been talking about there, show relevant information to our clients about the transition of their employees from working on-premise to working remotely, and also how we can look at their browser compliance, how we can ensure that they're getting a consistent level of performance, and that all of the companies can be happy that everyone is being productive from home. And so what we did is we've had ERP Insights for about 8 years. And what it is it's a simple piece of software that we can install in a couple of hours. And what that enables you to do is work out exactly what everyone is doing in JD Edwards in terms of real-time performance. Because this code runs in their browser, you don't have to install it in their browser, but it runs in their browser. It gives you real-time performance metrics on all of your users and allows you to understand what they're doing in JDE. So we continually learn more about this and we continually adopt and change. And I have to be honest, the more you know about what your users are actually doing and actually experiencing, that's how you can improve the environment for them and their productivity, and that's really critical. So this constant innovation, constant deployment, and continually making improvements. And we've seen JD Edwards move from that with 9.2 and no longer huge updates, but more regular cadences in terms of updating your ERP. And so what we did is I've been putting together some dashboards which allow us to see what people are doing in JD Edwards. And here's a really simple example of a dashboard of real user information. And what we can see is initially we have a list of operating systems and browsers that are being used for this particular system. We can see that we're just looking at the last month of data. So it's been defaulted to look at the last month of data. This particular site, this is our demo site. So we've had 4,000 page views, and when comparing month on month, we've actually had a big increase in our page views in that month. We've had a big increase in users. And we can actually measure how much time people are spending on their pages. So we can see that 90 hours of engagement has been measured during this period of time. Now, I can see here that if I wanted to look at any rogue browsers, so once again, people are working from home, maybe we've got a few rogue browsers in. So if I wanted to see who's using Firefox, I can quickly select Firefox here. I know they're coming in from Victoria, and I can see the username that's actually been performing Firefox actions. We know that they've done 52 page views, and we know the version of Firefox that they're using. So we can quickly see and determine who's running compliant browsers, who's not running compliant browsers. If I wanted to look from a username perspective, I can click on the username and I can see in the last month, the JDE username has looked at 161 pages. It's logged in from Victoria and New South Wales, and it's used a mixture of Chrome and Edge. So we're able to quickly see what's going on. What we also have here is we have some optional metrics. So I can actually look at the page load time. And as I explained earlier, that is the time it took for the page to load for the end user. And we get to use these empirical numbers to say Edge, for example, was loading in 1.5 seconds on average. Chrome was loading in 1.5 seconds on average, and Edge is loading in 0.64 seconds on average. So we get to have, we understand what browser performs best for our users. These reports, so I'm using Data Studio, Google Data Studio to display this data. Because we store the data in Google Analytics, you could choose to use Power BI, or you could choose to use your favorite reporting system to interpret the data. We use Data Studio because it's a native Google product. What we've also got here, and I'll just choose some other sample data, is we can see now for this particular site in the last month, we can see the historical use. So the dark orange line is last month, and then we compare that with the month before. So we can do these month-on-month comparisons for how many page views are being loaded for this particular organization. So we can see we're looking at 2.5 million page views and 3,000 users. Now that's down approximately 2.3% on the previous month, month-on-month data. And then we can see what modules they're using, and then which parts of the world. So if I just wanted to, maybe I can see from India, there's 94,000 page loads. And I could actually click on one of these countries, and that will filter all of the other graphs. So if I want to see what my users are doing in India, I can see their daily page loads, whether that's up or down, day on day, week on week. And I can also see the modules in JD Edwards that they're actually using. So I can continue to slice and dice my data, understand my users much better, and then start to tune the environment specifically for them. We've also got different modules here where we can look at this per page view, or what is my users. So which modules are most popular in terms of my user base, and I can select that here and then hover over it, and I can see 1,700 users are using inventory management. I can see technical tools as the next one, so my 98 system code, shop floor, 1,100 users. So I can really quickly get a great bird's eye view of what's going on in JD Edwards, and I get the ability to look at that data now, and I can also look at that data retrospectively. So really powerful methods of being able to determine what's going on in JD Edwards. This reporting environment is extremely easy to use. I've modified and created many of these reports in an hour or two, is what I'm showing you here today. The second report that I'm going to do some demonstrations on is just a simple high-level summary of what's been going on in an organisation. So what we see here, again, it defaults from April the 20th to May the 19th. I can choose any date period I want. So I can go back to January the 1st, let's say, and if I want to look at all the accesses for this particular site since January, I can see that we've had 29 users log in, 18,000 page views, and they've run 325 distinct applications. And again, we can see where that access is coming from around the world. We can see what programs they're using, and we can see what modules they're using. So this is really important for determining test saturation. One of the great use cases for this software is working out what you need to test and what you need to test and what has been tested. So what we've got an example here is, if I look at all of my JD Edwards access, I could choose an environment. So if I only wanted to look at DV, or if I wanted to look at Play, what real customers, because this is our demo environment, real customers would have PD, UA, QA, PY, etc. You can look exactly what's going on in PY, for example. You can look at what's been run in the user acceptance environment in the last week, and you can then determine whether you've tested enough to get the latest ESUs into production. So we can quickly see what applications are run. We can see how many hours of engagement have been gathered in that period of time. We can see the average time people spend on those pages. We can see how often it's been used. So we look at work with batch versions. It's been loaded 503 times. On average, it's run for 41 seconds, and cumulatively there's 6 minutes of engagement. We can look at particular users and see what particular users are doing as well. So for this user, this is exactly what they've done since January the 1st in both of these environments. So we can see they've used mainly the Play environment, and they've been pretty busy using all these various applications. All of the controls here, if you wanted to look at your users, if you found a user that you wanted to ensure that they did their testing, or that they were a model user to do testing in another environment, what you can do is export this, download it to Excel, download to CSV, and then you have a test plan for what your users need to do in QA, because this is exactly what users are doing in production. What we've also been able to develop is a report that will show you quite specifically what is run in production and what has not been run in UA in the last week, the last month, the last year. So you can imagine how powerful this would be if you were doing testing in JD Edwards, and I could give you a list of all the applications in prod, and this is it. So this is all the applications in production that have not been run in the UA environment. And so this just shows you your test gap. So each of these applications, like, oh, this is really important. It's been used 308 times in production, and we haven't used it in UA, and that might be in the ESU or something important that we need to test before the next release. So we're able to be more agile because we can measure exactly what's going on in the business more quickly. something else I want to show you here is, I think many people are talking, and Andrew talked about it, we're talking about robotic process automation. And it's critical to start to look at your processes in JD Edwards and either automate them for testing or automate them for execution. There's two opportunities. Automating for execution is going to be done with orchestration. And so how do you find processes in JD Edwards that are ripe for orchestration? Well, what we do is we remove this filtering, we look at our most popular applications, which might be this P13700, the planning workbench. We can see it's been used 250 times. 2 users have used that, and we can see it's occupied 5 hours, 28 minutes and 1 minute and 1 second of people's time in JD Edwards. And we might think, hey, this is ripe. I know exactly what people do in this planning execution screen. And they generally get an email in and they'll type in the data. Let's turn that into an orchestration, or let's automate these processes to make it easier for our end users. And then we can actually measure the improvements that we make using our analytics tools. So really important for finding what you need to test and also finding some robotic process automation opportunities. The next part of what we've done with understanding JD Edwards, so I think you've seen that we understand exactly what's going on from the interactive side of things. So we know the apps, we know the environments, we can compare the environments, we know our users, and we know performance. So we know all these data points that we can slice and dice and give people unparalleled understanding of what's going on in JD Edwards. Imagine if you did a tools release. Imagine if you did a database upgrade and you want to understand the net performance improvements post your database upgrade. Well, then you could look at a screen like this. We could look at some data here, and then we could see this shows us the average page load time, the average server response time, and the average page download time since January 1. And we can see it's pretty consistent along here. So we're getting consistent performance until February. And if we look at this dark line in terms of the page download, if we look at the page load time, so if we're looking at this data here, we can see that we've got a bit of an exceptional period between, I guess, March 11 until April 21, where performance is almost doubled. We're getting 3-second page response times. So we're able to look at this really quickly, drill down on that data. We could see what applications were slowing down. We could see what modules were slowing down. We could see if it was a particular browser. We have all these extra information to be able to solve the problem of why that has slowed down. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is look at the batch side. So we've focused really on the interactive side. We have many more reports. So part of this subscription is you get about 10 different reports, and they all have 10 different screens built into them. But we also have done a lot of work on the batch side of things. And what you'll see here is I've got a couple of screens that I like. Have you ever wondered why a batch job was taking too long, or have you ever wondered, has it always taken this long, or wanted to know the historical load runtime of batch jobs, or maybe the queue time of batch jobs, or how many rows they were processing? What we've been able to do now is we have a window into your batch jobs. And so what we can do is we can choose a particular job. So we've got all the jobs and how long they've run for. So we can choose a particular job here, the 13800. And then what we get is the runtime history, the blue line of how long it's taken on average. And so it's pretty consistent, about 375 seconds. We can see the 2 versions of that report. So if we choose the 02 version, we can see how long that's taken. So all of our filtering, whatever controls we have, our filtering applies, and we can start to see whether we've got long-term degradation in performance. My final thing that I'm going to show you is how we integrate this into JD Edwards, because this is a JD Edwards event. And so this is our demonstration site. I log into my demonstration site and I've got an E1 page here, which gives me a high-level summary of my environment. So what it's showing me is a week-on-week compare of my environment. So it's going from, fortnight, May 6th to May 19th. and it shows me how many UBEs are run. So we're down 5% on UBEs, we're down 4% on pages loaded. We've had a few more users log in, run UBEs, and we've had a few more users log into JD Edwards, and so on and so on. So you can see we get this really great high-level summary of exactly what's going on in our environment. We can tell if things are slowing down. So the average page load time has increased by 22%. Honestly, if this was me and the server response time has increased by 46%, I'd be looking into this. This means people are getting delayed a lot, because we're loading 142,000 pages in this time period and it's taking an extra 0.25 of a second. That's going to add up. That's real differences. What we can also do is, if we were to look at a program, for example, so I'm going to go into the security management program. I'm going to look at my records. And if I select one of these rows, what it's going to do, it's reaching out, it's using Cafe One. Fantastic. If you're not using Cafe One, get into Cafe One. And what it's doing is it's going to ERP Analytics and it's finding out who's running P01012 and how often that gets run. And then it's going out and looking at what program Shannon Moyer has run. So now I'm in my security application in JD Edwards. I can see exactly what Shannon Moyer does in the application. Interestingly, it's just all tech tools, so he's a pretty boring guy. But we get all this background information. So if you ever asked to copy a user, if you ever asked to do anything in JD Edwards, we get a whole heap of extra information, like where P01012 is being run from, how many users are running it. We get all that information, plus we get the user-centric information. The final screen I'm going to show, because I know I'm running out of time, but hopefully I'm giving Andrew a buffer to get the other presenters ready, is we have similar contextual relationship using Cafe One with our batch window. So here is an example. If we look at the general ledger post and I just select this in work submitted jobs, what that does then is shows me the complete history of R09801. So I get to see how long it takes to process, how many rows it's processing, and I see that for the last month, which is completely configurable. I just choose how many jobs. I know it's been run 3,300 times in this last month. I get to see how many rows per second it's processing, and I get to see the versions that are being processed. And so whichever job I'm looking at here, if I wanted to look at the 12800, once again, it punches through that data through Cafe One, and then I get to see that context sensitive information in JD Edwards. So hopefully you've seen, we can show you some really cool insights into what your users are doing interactive. We can show you what they're doing with their batch, and you can use that information to improve their experiences, to ensure that there's consistency between technical changes, and to make your testing and training much more efficient. Thank you very much.
I would like to take this opportunity. I'm extremely privileged and excited to have both Bob Monahan and Gary Goroshover, two VPs for JD Edwards and based in Denver, on this call with us today. I know some of the New Zealand customers would have listened to Gary talk, and it was great to have Gary on board for an NZ customer event in December last year. So I'm really excited to have both of them here to run through some of the fantastic updates and announcements with JD Edwards. So with that, I'll hand over to Gary.
Thank you to all of our customers joining today. So good morning, good afternoon, and thank you to Andrew and the Fusion 5 team for inviting Gary and I. As Andrew said, both Gary and I are part of the JD Edwards development organization, specifically within the product management group. So for those people that have seen our presentations in the past, you're well aware that we have a safe harbor statement. We have some future, some planned items in the presentation, and as always, plans can change. So let's start with an overview, high level, of our JD Edwards product strategy. Really 3 areas of focus for us. And this really isn't anything significantly new. It's been more of an evolution of where we've been investing in the product and fine-tuning our messaging over the last couple of years, but 3 primary areas. One is in the area of simplify and automate. If you want to think about this, Gary's going to talk about this, and digital a little bit more detailed. I'll focus on ERP coming up. But at a high level, simplify and automate is focused on system administration and running JD Edwards in the cloud. ERP optimization, really, how do we optimize the existing applications and business processes that you use today? And for digital transformation, continue to build on that digital platform that we have with JD Edwards, leveraging Orchestrator and our platform extensibility tools. The other thing just to keep in mind is while we have a lot of great capability within the JD Edwards product itself, being part of Oracle gives us an incredible amount of additional leverage. So if we think about JD Edwards in the middle of this picture where we have simplify and optimize and digital transformation, we can leverage Oracle's cloud infrastructure. So if you wish, you could run your JD Edwards implementation, your instance of JD Edwards in Oracle's data center. In addition to that, being a world-class data center, we have other capabilities that we can use, such as database cloud service, or for customers that have really large processing needs, Exadata cloud service. Also, we have the ability of leveraging other Oracle cloud applications with JD Edwards. For example, applications that might be an ERP or maybe EPM cloud that are really best-in-class capability for doing things like financial close and annual and quarterly reporting. Maybe SCM cloud, products like best-in-class transportation management, CX, which is sales and service, and then HCM cloud. Again, all that can complement and extend JD Edwards to give you greater business capability. Some recent announcements, just to make everyone aware. The first is from a lifetime support policy. JD Edwards released 9.2. Previously, it was supported on Premier support through 2030. Oracle management reviews that policy on an annual basis. And this past year, they decided to extend that another year. So JD Edwards is now supported, released 9.2 through at least 2031. And again, Oracle management in future years will continue to review that and decide if and when they wish to extend that even further, perhaps. Other key announcements in April, we had an update on our tools, some more capability and enhancements. So we call it Tools 9.2.4.3, which is really Tools Release 9.2, Update 4, and then we have Maintenance Pack 3. So enhancements in the area of digital transformation around Orchestrator, and again, in the area of user experience. And likewise, on our application side, we had a set of enhancements, ESUs, that were delivered in April as well. So over 50 enhancements delivered, all driven by customer request. And really proud that we were able to include the #1 financial SIG request, really around GL batch auditing, and some #1 and #2 enhancement requests for manufacturing user group around using order activity rules and work order ledger history. So you'll see those as part of the announcement. Just remember, go out, look at learnjde.com, look at announcements, and you'll see all the details of what we delivered in tools and apps early in April. As a refresher, release 9.2 first came to the market, is generally available in November of 2015. So hard to believe, but it's actually been on the market now for 4.5 years. But we continue to add enhancements on a continuous delivery basis. Typically, that's twice a year, usually in April, as I just had the announcement we talked about. And then usually in the October, November timeframe, we have another set of both application and tools enhancements. And then once a year in November, we usually package all of those up and we create a cumulative update. So that cumulative update includes all the enhancements, all the bug fixes, security, certifications that came out since the release of 9.2 in November 2015. So for customers that might be upgrading, the update is a great way to work with Fusion 5, take the update and they can get you really concurrent very, very quickly. And then you can look at the ESUs that we deliver throughout the year, typically in April, and then decide, are there any one of those specifically that you want to download and take advantage of at that particular point in time as part of our continuous innovation and continuous delivery model on 9.2. Oftentimes customers will say, okay, well, there's a lot of great capability. I still can leverage that. I'm not exactly completely concurrent today, but what is JD Edwards development team thinking of maybe going forward? So if we look at this slide, on the left we see planned, and on the right we see research, and underneath each of those there's 3 columns for those different areas of our strategy, such as simplify and automate, optimizing our ERP applications and digital transformation. So typically what you see on the left, these are enhancements that we are targeting or planning that could be released sometime within the next 12 months. Those on the right, they're further out. They're still in the early stages of research. So if and when those get delivered, they're most likely beyond a 12-month window. And again, if you opt to access Oracle, My Oracle support, there's a short presentation out there that has this information, so you don't have to all try to write it down. So I'll turn it over to Gary to talk about our simplify and automate strategy.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Bob. Yeah. Let's start to dig into the product strategies a little bit more. Share a little bit more detail about what we're doing. You know, this first area is around, we call it simplify, automate. It's around doing exactly that. You know, the goal is to allow you to move fast, allow you to lower your costs, and allow you to, stay current. So that's really our primary strategy with the simplify, automate strategy. And there's three main components to that strategy. First being delivery of an enterprise class infrastructure for you to run JD Edwards on top of. And so, not every customer has, the latest, the best of breed, the fastest, disk and networking and all those things to run JD Edwards on. It's a complicated thing, but we're going to deliver that. We're delivering that to you in the form of the public cloud infrastructure and doing a lot of innovation on top of that infrastructure. The second thing is, once you've installed, is to get to 9.2 and stay current. That's what we call continuous innovation and deployment. Our goal is to make it easier and easier for you to stay current and take advantage of all the new capabilities we're putting into the platform, the tools platform, as well as the applications. And things like what was shared with you earlier on automated testing, is a key component of that, being able to go fast and stay current with a lot of confidence. The last area is once you're up and running, you're current, you want your IT organization to focus on perhaps other areas than the day-to-day babysitting of JD Edwards. So we want to make things like monitoring to make sure the system's up and running, troubleshooting issues, things along those natures to be as easy and efficient as possible. So let's talk just a little bit more about why we think that these are the three key areas of focus and very important for you. On the infrastructure side, a lot of challenges that we see. A lot of dated system architecture practices. This may be an I-Series architecture or some other architecture you deployed 10 or more years ago that you're still kind of leveraging. The world has changed significantly since that point. Another legacy issue is the need to peak for your maximum workload. Maybe you have an end of month, end of year, peak season. You need to make sure the system, the servers are set up to manage that peak. It's disruptive and very costly to refresh that hardware in your own data center. Can be difficult to implement things that are now table stakes, such as high availability and disaster recovery environments. And you may have specialized skill sets. You may have a specific technology you're using that that's difficult to source on the open market. So those are some of the challenges that we see. What we're delivering is automation of a best practices architecture. So we have a reference architecture that we published both from a documentation standpoint as well as automated tools to deploy that into the Oracle Cloud. The second thing we're really focused on a lot, you'll see some of the early deliveries here, is around elasticity, and that's if you're not familiar with that term, really what it means is that you can scale up, scale down the system resources according to what you need at that hour, day, period of time. So you can let's say maybe have a lot more users entering orders during your peak season. You may need to scale up the resources on for the web client for the JAS server infrastructure. Or maybe you're doing a lot of batch processing, so you may want to shift resources to that at some point. So that's elasticity in a key area of focus, something that the public cloud infrastructures can deliver very elegantly. And then finally is that cloud infrastructure, is the underlying system that's there, and just having, again, I can't reiterate enough, the end user experience and the stability and the reliability of the system really starts with the lowest layer, the disk, works its way up the technology stack. And so being on a cutting edge, high performance platform and that's offered at a very low cost will really dramatically improve your system performance and end user experience. So now the second area around staying current, it can be difficult to stay current. An upgrade project in 9.2 is one step in the process, and we've seen the vast majority of our customers make that step. Now, once you're there, how do you stay current? And some challenges kind of face you there. High effort to upgrade, all those customizations that you may have there's time and effort in retrofitting those to the new version. Ongoing cost to validate those, to test it and make sure you have the sign off and confidence to go live with that. And then also, just potential impacts to your existing business processes. The change management for your end users is important. So along those lines, what we've delivered is that simplified upgrade to help you get to 9.2, but also to apply those annual updates that Bob mentioned. So, that simplified upgrade works well for applying the 9.2.4, application update as well. That'll dramatically reduce the retrofit time for you. We've been at this for around 5 years, is delivering this extensibility framework, comprised of UX1 and all of the things you can do through the browser user interface, as opposed to building a customization. Those user-defined changes are really, really critical. So retiring customizations, we're seeing a major trend of customers, driving their customizations, as close to zero as possible. Makes it a lot easier to stay current, because you don't have to retrofit those customizations to the new version. And then finally, something that we're just getting started with, and I know I listened to the earlier talk on automated testing. This is a very important aspect to be able to without a tremendous amount of human labor, get that confidence. And automated testing has a key role in that, and something that we've been working on for quite a while in the JD Arista product development team. So the last area is around efficient run and maintain. So we want to have an environment, again, where you can efficiently manage the system, avoid challenges like time-consuming manual system administration activities, allow IT resources to focus on other things instead of just the care and feeding of JD Arista. So focus on more innovative things like maybe document management, or alternative UIs, or all the kind of emerging technologies that can really help drive the business forward. And also, system maintenance, can interrupt business processes, take the system down. So we want to reduce the impact on any change to the system. So focused on 3 areas here for that: simplifying the system administration tasks, the repetitive changes. A lot of that is in the server manager tool. That's also gives you a lot of those things, the health checks and things like that. Moving into to leveraging that to do more system self-managing, leveraging some emerging DevOps technologies to help simplify troubleshooting as well. And then overall, delivering automation for things like package build, deployment, those type of things to lower the system administration costs. So this is a brief snapshot of what we've delivered over the last 12 months or planning in the next 12 months to help simplify, automate your usage of JD Edwards. So if I start over on the right side here around the automation area, delivered one-click automation. That's a up-to-date JD Edwards payload, we call it. So the latest tools and apps and ESUs that will an automated installation process. Also utilities to lift your on-premise configuration, all your setup, all your data, etc. configuration, activity rules, all that, lift it and move it if you're going to migrate JD Edwards from on-premise to cloud. Again, I mentioned the reference architecture, best practice, architecture setup. You can also upgrade to 9.2 while moving to the cloud as one step. So typically your target environment would be the public cloud, so you're moving from on-premise. So it's that lift and shift is what we call it. And then in the elasticity area, we published a white paper on how to use an OCI capability called auto scale that will detect when the system is getting short on system resources and automatically clone and elasticity scale up. A couple other things we're working on is the autonomous database. That is an elasticity layer amongst a lot of other things at the database layer. So the Oracle Autonomous Database. If you haven't heard about that, that's definitely an emerging thing and something we're engineering right now to work with JD Edwards. And then finally is a full elastic deployment. So today the white paper tells you how you can take advantage of some of these capabilities through configuration. This would take that to the next level and be part of the standard installation and update toolset. Continuous innovation. I'll go through this fairly quickly, but we talked about the simplified update. I think you've probably seen, I think I heard earlier, talk about a capability we have that'll track users, what they're doing, what objects they're hitting, which programs are running, which reports they're running, things like that. That'll track actual user behavior and then feeds it into the impact analysis, so you can have a good idea what your users are doing, so you know what when you make a change, what that will impact. We've delivered a very extensive low-code, no-code platform called UX1 that really helps with that. We have a report called the Decustomizer report that'll look at your customizations and identify ones that we believe could be retired by using the low-code the UX1 platform. And then again, we're working on automated testing right now. On the efficient run and maintain side, we have a lifecycle management, that's the term LCM, for these user-defined objects. These are these personalizations is the synonymous thing. Again, it's what you enable your users, maybe your power users, to do through the web browser, logged into JD Edwards, like move fields around. The old grid formats is part of that. Adding things like watch lists, compose pages, those things. There's a whole set of, I think there's 12 different areas around that. But to manage that, you need to be able to promote it through your life cycle and go from a dev, test, prod, or however you want to manage that. So that's what the user-defined LCM is. We've REST enabled a lot of the server manager capabilities, probably more than a lot, I think most. So you can if you have a monitoring tool or some other technology you may be using, you can send a REST web service call to the server manager, and you can retrieve things like the system up, what users are logged in, a lot of broad set of things you can automate through that. And then there's a health check capability that just runs through a set of scripts that we have to make sure that the system looks like it's up and running and it's running efficiently. Then going forward, a lot in this area, virtual batch queues is going to help with that elasticity of the batch processing. which is we know can be, the queue setup can be a complex thing. So we're trying to remove some of that complexity and more efficiently use system resources as batch workloads vary throughout the day or the month. Dev client simplification, starting with a feature we have upcoming around removing the local database requirement of the dev client, which can be a complex setup, makes the footprint on the client a lot bigger as well. So we're excited about simplifying that Windows-based dev client as a step towards truly a thin development client. Web enabling the OMW capability. It's including all OMW project promotions and things along those lines. And then a blue-green deployment model, which we publish a white paper on. It just talks about how to get to zero downtime by having two sets of environment. Maybe it's your disaster recovery environment, and quiescing one environment, switching load over to the other, so that you can then patch or update the blue environment, and then swap back over. So you get to near zero downtime. So I went through that pretty quickly. There's a lot underneath it. You can learn a lot about that in LearnJD, as you know. But there's also a white paper we published that summarizes, simplify, automate, the three areas that we're focused on, what we've delivered and what we have on our near-term roadmap in the next 12 months. So Bob, we'll turn it over to you for the quick ERP update.
Okay, good. So let's talk about how do we actually go about optimizing JD Edwards ERP applications. Really, there's kind of three areas we're focusing on within ERP. The first is really around customer-driven productivity. So how do we improve the overall efficiency of users on JD Edwards? That could be as simple as removing the number of clicks. So maybe instead of having to go 2 levels down on a row exit or a form exit, can we surface that up and make it, just overall navigation easier? A lot of requests coming in from customers to add additional data to reports to help eliminate one, customization, and two, by presenting more data on reports, really help them understand the users consuming those reports within the business to have a better understanding of the overall business processes and the business status. So a lot of really focused on productivity and efficiency. The next area is enhancing our existing business processes. So I look at business processes as either being horizontal or industry. So horizontal are typically, in the area of financials, accounting, maybe in procurement. So an example of that is we recently, and I alluded to this earlier, did an enhancement around the GL batches. So having a complete audit trail. So once a GL batch is created, has somebody changed it? Was it approved? Did somebody delete it? That whole complete history. So that's a very key process. And an industry process, for example, a recent enhancement in April, we enhanced the picking logic within warehouse management, really focusing on optimizing pallet or license plate picking. Another example of industry enhancements was in the area of manufacturing, again, adding more rigor and more control using order activity rules. And in the last area I would talk about within enhancing existing processes, a brand new application called Project Status Inquiry that's really targeted for project-based companies. So it allows you to see all the jobs that are underneath a project, slice and dice and look at those different jobs in many, many different vectors and put in your own user-defined calculations, your own alerts and variances. So very, very powerful. New application was released in April, part of our job cost and project applications. And then the last area that really focused for ERP optimization is ongoing regulatory compliance. As everybody on the phone knows, governments are continually updating the regulatory compliance in the areas of supply chain, being able to make sure how goods are flowing across the system. Many governments asking to approve invoices that are being produced, so they have copies of those goods moving, as well as even changes in tax regulatory reporting. So some of this is at a global level. Recent enhancements we did with lease management. So whether you're a lessor of property or a lessee of property or equipment, you now have to report that on your balance sheet. So that capability is global. Every country now requires that for public companies. So that's in JD Edwards 9.2. An example of maybe industry or a country requirement might be all the changes that have ongoing in India in the last 5 to 7 years as they change their tax reporting schema.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Bob. I know that was a quick overview of the ERP enhancement, but there's a lot behind that. So many are customer driven, which to me I think implies that they'll be good for you as well, because some of those, like, they may be rough edges is what I would call it in the system. But keep an eye on that. Look at the Learn JD announcements. We highlight some of those, and then the product catalog tool as well. Last section of the strategy is digital transformation. That's a big buzzword in the industry. Is everyone become a digital business? Well, what does that mean in the context of JD Edwards? It means really two primary things. First of all, is you have JD Edwards, you're up and running, it runs your business. You have a set of apps that represent your business processes. But equally important, or maybe even more so, is the data that you've collected over the years. That's really the digital asset, or as we like to say, that's your gold right there. But it's traditionally been a difficult thing to get that out. Yeah, you can run reports, you can run analytics, but to really allow the JD Edwards business processes and logic and your data, participate in your digital transformation initiatives, whatever they are, has been a difficult thing. So we've done a couple things. First of all is, again, the UX1 framework, making it easier to change the browser-based JD Edwards user interface to meet the user's needs. And again, a series of these frameworks that we have around here, everything from UX to search dialogues to replacing customizations and whatnot through that. But to open up the JD Edwards, again, applications and data, to the broader world, and there are all these emerging use cases, probably not even emerging, these are use cases that are here today. But to build into our platform the ability to service up these apps and data to mobile or to low code, no code user development platforms or chatbots, process automation, extending logic or IoT, just a lot of integrating with other apps. That's where the orchestrator really excels, and has been really such a popular thing that's being adopted very broadly. Orchestrator, if you're not familiar with that, it's a browser-based design time tool where you can lay out a sequence of steps. You could call it a workflow, but it really sequences together a series of steps in JD Edwards, and you can even make it include external steps as well. Maybe you want to query like a weather app or something like that as part of it, but sequence that together and create what's called an orchestration to help address these use cases. So for example, from a low code, no code UI, I know that customers are adopting things like Mendix as a no code platform, other mobile specific optimized platforms. That is our recommendation to leverage that, build an orchestration that does the one-to-many steps that would take to do that through JD Edwards, so you can leverage that logic, and the activity becomes just designing the UI and these orchestrations to get information in and out of JD Edwards. Process automation, whether that's an enterprise-wide process automation, using tools, standards-based tools that are out there, where JD Edwards activities are one step in the process, maybe like an employee onboarding scenario where you need to do something in JD Edwards, but as well as maybe in your HR system or payroll systems. I guess those could all be JD Edwards as well, but maybe there's a series of things you want to do. Use a robotic process automation platform to have JD Edwards easily participate, or equally as important is just within JD Edwards, automate processes. You know, we see customers do things like create orchestrations to set up a new business unit because they have a high volume of these being created, which, you know, may take 30 steps or so in JD Edwards to do so. So compress that into one activity. And then finally, a whole bunch of things in the area of extensibility, integration to machines, other apps, and extending your logic through that as well. So if you haven't looked at Orchestrator, please do so. Contact Fusion 5, you know, asking for a demo. It can really be quite a game changer to the automation, the user experience, all these use cases around leveraging the investment you have in JD Edwards. So with that, let me just close on that. If you haven't already got to 9.2, you know, we think that that's your next step. We really recommend that. You can take advantage of all the digital capabilities, take advantage of all the ongoing innovation, like orchestrations, like the application improvements, like the simplify, automate capabilities. Allows you to react rapidly to your business needs. So if there is a requirement, you know, if you're current or fairly current, it's highly more likely that you'll be able to, you know, address those needs in the business. You know, create a new form, you know, change a form, do all those things that orchestrations can do. Reduces your risks because built into these updates is all of our security improvements. And we continue to do that. Roughly twice a year, we have you know, CPU releases, which are the critical patch updates that are, and it's mainly done at the tools layer, but it reduces your risks. And then overall, you still maintain choice and control about your roadmap, how you're going to use ERP over the long term. You know, on-premise, in the cloud, adopting SaaS applications, or leveraging the licensed applications. A customer that we would like to highlight that really kind of summarizes, in my opinion, a lot of what we've talked about today is Circle K. They were running JD Edwards on-premise. They upgraded, moved to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure at the same time. You can kind of see the suite of applications they have here. They applied automation to their key processes, procure to pay, sourcing, in order to cash. They've seen a decrease since they've gone to 9.2. I can't remember if they started from 9.0, but they've seen a 14% decrease in their incidents. These are things that are they get reported to their internal help desk. So that's a good step in the right direction. They've also empowered their super users to use UX1 and those type of tools to address what used to be an IT backlog. Availability domains is a technology in the Oracle Cloud that allowed them to have better disaster recovery environments, and overall they've reduced their operational costs. So really a great story around, you know, what we're doing in the product to help enable. We went through this pretty quickly. One of the things we'd like to point you to is Lyle's keynote. If you don't know Lyle is the general manager for the JD Edwards business at Oracle. Watch his keynote that he recorded from the Collaborate virtual conference. He'll highlight, you know, a lot of these, you know, big picture strategies. He's very visionary. If you haven't listened to him in the past, and then he'll highlight, you know, several customer stories. So, you know, great ideas you get from what other customers are doing. Also, more detailed educational opportunity is the Quest Forum digital event, June 8th through the 11th. So invite you to join that, see if that's something that will benefit your organization, and sign up for that. We're doing, you know, something like 30 sessions from the JD Edwards product development team, but also customer presentations, other partner presentations where you can really, you know, immerse yourself in everything JD Edwards at that event. And then finally, just like to say, if you're not, you know, connected to us, connect. This is where we publish announcements and updates and new, training, things, and our partners participate in these communities as well. So you'll see a lot of, it's a great place to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on with JD Edwards.
One of our functional consultants, Jenny, and our consulting manager, Ben, who are going to talk about some options and what you can do with testing automation.
All right, beautiful. Thank you. All right, thank you everyone for joining this town hall. What we want to do is we want to actually provide you with a bit of an insight into testing automation. So the world of JDE is changing to a point where we need to rapidly adapt to changes in the way that we handle the system. So what I want to start out with is that automation is now the new norm. No longer are we starting to rebuild the way in which we test our system. We don't want to constantly reinvent the wheel, and we don't want to be pulling people off the front line to do mundane testing. So by adopting an automation as the new norm for your JDE system, we end up finding that we have a lower code current testing effort during upgrades and any updates. We can validate that if you do have any restore or DR exercises, that we're testing our business processes. And we can also quickly determine if there are any modifications or customizations that you are introducing into your system, if there are any downstream impacts. Now, I just want to lay the foundation and essentially show what the testing scope is that we generally deal with on a day-to-day basis with JD Edwards. So there's usually your unit testing, which is required to ensure that the code works. So the developer will unit test a customization or a modification. Now, that will essentially just ensure that the code is going to work for you in that set environment. Then there's going to be an aspect of functional testing. So we need to ensure that the business requirement is met from that functional spec or tech spec or whatever it is that you're working from. Then you're also going to have to move into a system integration test. So is there something downstream that is essentially going to be impacted by this customization or modification? Then finally, you need to go to user acceptance testing. So is the user happy with what the final product is? All right. Out of this testing, there are a lot of pain points, and I'm pretty sure everyone on this call is going to be aware. So the first one is resource availability. We just don't have the resources available or the staff to be able to do the testing that's required. Repetitive testing can be repetitive. If we're going to be doing, say, a tools release or apply an ASU, or if there's something there, the testing can be repetitive. If you're doing that twice a year, people are not going to be willing to do it. A lot of it can be unnecessary as well. So if the scope of your testing is not clear as to why you're testing that, let's just say, for example, you're rolling out an ASU. Now, in that ASU, there could be 1,000 modified objects, but for your installation, there may only be 200 objects that are going to be touched. Why are we testing the objects that that ASU is not going to touch? Now, it may seem pointless, but there may be some sort of integrated reason for testing that, but we don't know. And what you probably would have found is in that previous presentation that Shannon showed, is that you can actually identify what people are using. So if there are linkage points in that process, you'll be able to identify that and then justify why you're testing that. Testing can be laborious. Now, I know with a lot of our clients, as soon as the word testing is mentioned, it's a roll your eyes moment, and no one really likes it. It can take a lot of time and a lot of patience. And as things change, someone's got to maintain that. It can be hit and miss as well. So depending on who's testing, it may not be the same as the person that's doing that business process day to day. We may get someone else in that has done it, say, once in a blue moon, but they may not hit all the points within that application or that batch process or that end-to-end process. So it can be hit and miss as to who is testing it and what they are testing. And test scripts. Now, I'm fairly certain a lot of people on this call are essentially going to say test scripts. Yeah, where are our test scripts? I think Jenny had those test scripts, but Jenny doesn't work here anymore. Test scripts are generally either they don't exist or they do exist, but they're now outdated as well. So what we're going to show you is we're going to show you a way where you can actually build your test scripts in an automated system that you can easily maintain and run them repetitively without user interaction. And the unknown, there is always the business processes that are generally unknown. I can't really give you an example of that because it's unknown. You know, what is your, you know, your procure to pay process? Well, John in, you know, the procurement team knows that, but he's away on annual leave at the moment. So they're the main pain points that we find with a lot of our clients. Where automation comes in and bridges that gap is we end up having a quality development. So unit testing scope is broadened. No longer does the developer just test if that application crashes or it doesn't crash. Can it retrieve data? Yeah, maybe it can. But they can actually invoke an automated testing script that not only just tests that application, but the downstream processes that link into that application or batch process as well. You can move to production a lot faster, all the way from unit testing to system integration testing, straight up to user acceptance testing. It is repetitive and precise, so variations will occur, but in the automation testing tool, those variations can be handled with ease. UAT comfort. We don't want to get to a point where we're saying to a user, you need to test your processes. We don't know exactly what processes, so just test all your processes. What we want to go to them and say is, we need you to test your processes. Here's what we've done so far with automation. It's more of a tick the box, are you comfortable now? And code currency, with testing automation and linking it in with the insights that you've just seen as well, we can actually take you and your system to a point where you can maintain code currency with a value proposition for your business and with ease. We can take the pain out of what do I need to test? How far do I need to test? What has changed? And insights, using the adaptive insights of ERP insights, ERP analytics, as Shannon was saying, you can then understand your testing scope and your completion progress. So if you know that you've got 87 applications and 42 batch UBEs that, you know, is affected by this ASU, we can actually invoke those testing scripts and nail that testing as well as upstream and downstream processing, just to make sure that we cover everything off. What we're going to do is, in partnership with ASIR, we use a product called Accra. Now, Jennifer Perousis, who is our functional testing guru, will take over from this point forward. And what she's going to show you is how easy it is to execute a testing script that she has generated, which will create a sales order entry all the way through to sales update. And the benefit of this is you can use it in many different ways. You can use it all the way from your unit testing through to your UAT. You can even use it in the background as a bit of a canary in the coal mine. So if you identify this as a key business process, what you can do is you can have that running in the background. And if anything changes that affects that, that test is constantly running. You can have it running daily, you can have it running hourly. It's up to you how often you want to run it. If something breaks in that, you can then be notified that something is broken in that, and then identify that something has caused that to break. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass over to Jenny now.
Okay, so what you have in front of you is the Accra testing suite. This is where I go into record my scripts and also run the execution. So before I actually run the execution, I'll give you a quick look at what the process looks like. So like Ben mentioned, I'm running the sales order entry process. I have my test steps here. So I've got a test case for sale order entry, and these are my test steps. So what we'll go through is sales order entry, print, pick, slip, ship, confirm, right through to sales update. Inside my test step, you'll see the actual steps that have been recorded for this script. So from login, I've got my fast path. You can add steps, you can delete, you can change the values before you actually run it. You can update them at any point. So these have been pre-recorded, and for it to run as an execution, so as a automated script, we add an automation. This is where we put in a name, JDE would be the product, and the URL. So this is where we can say we want it to point to PY or production, whichever environment we want to run this in. I've already got one ready, so I'm going to click close here instead of add one. Go to my automation execution. And I'm going to run my F5 play sales order entry script. I'll give it an iteration name. I'm going to leave my browser as Chrome as my default. You have an option to select different browsers. My default is to run now because I'm manually running them. You can schedule these scripts to run and you can run them daily, weekly, or a scheduled start date. But for the purpose of today, we'll run it manually. This is where I select which test case I want to run. So I'm only going to run sales order entry. And I click run. This takes a couple of moments just to kick off the engine, which I can show you processing.
It's not on the page 2 there, is it, Jen?
No, I'm getting bad network message. So I'm getting a bad network message. I don't know if it's worth me trying to connect to my phone, sorry.
So essentially what's going to happen here, just for everyone's benefit, is that when Jenny launches the engine, a little DOS prompt will come up and it'll show the processes that will come through. And it actually steps through the process and it shows the screens that are built within that script. So you will actually see the processes if someone's actually opening the application, clicking the buttons, entering the data, and it is quite rapid. And that's what we're trying to achieve on this demonstration. So what we find is that there's a few testing engines out there. The ones that we have is we can use Oracle Application Testing Suite, or this one which is Acro, which is a web-based engine tool as well.
Now here we go. Excellent. Okay, so this is the automation. This is, if you can see at the top here, it says Chrome is being controlled by automatic test software. This is the sales order entry step that it's processing. Can you still see my screen? It seems to be lagging for me.
Yep, no, we can still see it okay.
So here it's entering a sales order. All this information has been predefined in the script previously that was created. What it will do once it's created a sales order, so it's given us our sales order number here, and that's stored as an attribute on the script and used throughout the whole test case. So this is a repeatable script. Once you create a sales order, each time you use it, it will use the stored attribute of each new creation. So you don't have to go in and change anything. The next step it's going to do is it's going to print the pick slip using, again, the stored attribute. Before it goes on to the next script that I've created, we have a validation rule set up, so it will check the status of the sales order before it continues on. So print pick slip will change the status of the sales order. So before it does the ship confirm, which is the next step, it will go and validate the status is correct. If it's not correct, or if it's not the value that we've predefined, it will error the script and the script won't run. It will also tell us that it failed because the status was incorrect. So now it's going to run the print pick slip, which you can see on the left it's done. I'm going back into sales order entry just to validate the next status is correct before I go on to ship confirm. So the validation happens pretty quickly. It uses that next status field in the grid. Additional validation that you can do is data dictionary, which is one that's quite popular. The next status, and we can also check that a job has finished processing before the next one starts. I think it's frozen again, unfortunately, guys, but that was my, oh, here we go, yep. So I'll let it do the ship confirm and then I might just stop it because I know I'm running low on time. But the one thing I did want to show you also is the reporting that's available once this finishes. So I'll just quickly have a look at the reporting. So you can see the script I ran is just here. So I'll have a look at one that I ran earlier. So sales order entry, that's the one that we just ran. They're the steps that we followed. And I've got a tick for everything there. I can have a look at the next test script and the same thing. If it failed, it would tell me at which step it failed. And if I wanted to, I could ask, it would also give me a screenshot of the failed screen and the error. So that's the reporting available. Every time the script runs, when it finishes, you'll also get the report emailed to you if you wanted to set it up that way. So I apologise for my technical issues, but hopefully that was enough for you to see that it is quite simple to set up and run.
Thank you, Jen. Just a quick question from one of the users. So do you have to build your own automated test scripts, or can they be supplied as part of the kit?
Yes, so we can supply them. We can provide, you can get a 20 pack of main used test scripts, which is something that we've been working on. And you can also share them. So at the moment, you can see there's a copy automation set. So if I did the copy, I could then share that with someone else's. And all you do is change your URL where I showed you with the execution setup.
Cool. And one final question as well is, would we be able to use this engine if I had an environment and I wanted to pre-build the data into that environment to set it up for a test? Can I use a data set from somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So there's data sets, there's so I didn't get to show you, but you can also create data banks, and depending on which step you're at in your script, you click create data bank and it will actually use the table from the application you're in. Cool. So you don't have to create your own spreadsheets. It will download the table, so you've got the fields to populate, which is quite a cool
excellent
option.
All right, what we might do is if people are interested, we can set up one-on-one demonstrations outside of this town hall. But look, there's a lot of questions there, obviously spurred a lot of interest. So look, thank you very much, Jenny, and we'll hand back to Andrew.
Thanks, everyone.
Hopefully everyone can see my screen. So really what I wanted to talk to people now about is with this world and with the pandemic in place, not that it's not, ever not been an issue, but really wanted to talk about how you can look at and protecting your JD instance from fraud. So quickly going through this, I wanted to quickly talk a little bit about what is fraud, some studies that are going on, and it talks about economic crime. How can it happen? What do you need to do? And then go into a solution that is available to help protect you and do a demo of that. So quickly, what is fraud? It's quite simple. It is, wrongful or criminal deception where people are, intend to have some financial or in some situations a personal gain or what's going on. It is out there. I know of at least 5 JDE customers in the APAC region that have experienced various forms of fraud, and whether these are dummy company set up, it's also potentially supplier bank details. So there's a variety of these, and these have occurred in this region. So one thing to do is every 2 years, and so waiting for the latest 2020 version from PwC to come out, they talk about, they do a crime and fraud survey with customers across there. It is out there and it is real. So you can see that at this stage, it's now jumped to 49. So nearly 1 in 2 companies out there have experienced some form of economic crime in their ERP. So it is something you need to think about. So what I really wanted to put across is, what can you do to take on some proactive measures? Because what a lot of people do is they've experienced a fraud in their organization, and it could be 6 months down the track. So everything that I'm going to talk about and show you is about trying to become more proactive. It's not about stopping it. That's not possible, because at the end of the day, when fraud occurs, there's normally some form of collusion. And that's something bigger inside of your organization than putting some controls in your systems. But it's about being as proactive and trying to get notifications in some places instantaneously that a change has occurred, and then you can put measures in place to fix that. So just a little bit more, focus on the different types, and what you'll see is in a lot of cases, and I've spoken to customers about asset misappropriation, so making changes to information in the system so that people can obtain products. And I've used to work for JD Edwards customers, and I've heard stories about things that used to happen. So I know that it is out there. So really, at the end of the day, what can happen? And the big focus that I want to look at is the financial manipulation, where people are doing it to benefit from themselves personally. Also, at the end of the day, you can have some forms of process errors, and you think that you have some change control or some layers of external controls in place, but it's easy to make a mistake. So by using the system, you can take that out of the way. So at the end of the day, what do you need to look at this, and what do you do? So I really want to monitor the data that's critical to my organization. Some people, it may be only a couple of areas, and it depends on what is your functional footprint of JD Edwards. But the easiest way to think of it is, what is the master data I need to look at controlling? Okay, this is something you do not put on transactional information. So it could be bank accounts, it could be payroll details, it could be item master. So if you start thinking about that, it also could be on system information, because you have customers out there that are concerned they have audit requirements and they've got controls in place from what changes get made to security. So it gives you the ability to keep a full audit trail of what's going on. So it's no longer, I know a lot of the times when I've dealt with auditors over the years, it's getting information out of the system and seeing what has changed. So it's not about, oh yes, a change has occurred and this is what it is. Using JD Edwards 21 CFR11, you have the ability to track what was the change, what was the value before, and what it was after, and who made the change and when it was done. You're then looking at an easy way to be able to see with information. You then also want to look at the potential of, is it that critical to my organization that I'd like to be prompted about it? So not getting a report once a month or once a week or whatever works for you, but I would like to know anytime certain key information has changed inside of my system. And having it built into JD Edwards gives you that central location to manage and control all of this information. So looking at this, the way that we're doing this is through QSoftware's Fraud Detector. Okay, it starts with off the basis of JD Edwards 21 CFR11. Okay, so a lot of people have heard about that. And I have spoken quickly about this is why we put the focus of doing this on master data, not on transactional information, because that will then put an overload on your system. But it gives you the core information about what information has changed, whether it was done by an add, update, or delete. What was the previous value? What was the new value? Who did it? So the user ID, when it was done, and you can build on that. So it gives you the ability to go, okay, for example, and I'll show you two examples that I'll run through where I have rules set up. And one is I only want to know when a bank account is changed. I'm not really interested in when a bank account is added or a bank account is removed, but I really want to know when a bank account to a supplier has been changed. Or the second time is I just want to know, if there's been any updates to an addressable record. But you may want to know any changes to items, or I just want to know about if someone deletes journals or deletes batches from the system. So it's all about what is your business requirements, what are your auditing requirements, and then off that you'll have a full audit trail of what's going on. You can then decide, do I want to be do I want to be notified about these changes, or am I happy with the report? So do I want to receive an email about, okay, that this has happened, Or am I happy just to have a scheduled job run every week that sends me a report and say, these are the list of all my changes? Okay, so yeah, just wanted to run through that a little bit quicker than normal, but you know, because of this great world, and normally this has been the time where in between could have stood on stage and thrown a few jokes at you, but so quickly I wanted to run through a brief demo of the fraud detection process. All right, so here I am. I'm inside of JD Edwards screen. I'm hoping people can see my JD Edwards screen. For those that don't know, Q Software is, when you install Q Software, it becomes an application that resides inside of your JD Edwards application. The module we're looking at is Fraud Detector. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So we're going to talk about Fraud Detector. Jump inside the application. The Fraud Detector controller just has a system job that runs on the side, so we can see that there's an active UBE. What I've done is I've built some rules. One I spoke about before is I just want to see if any changes to a bank account. All right. So if I go out here and find a person in here, have a look at them, if they have a bank account. Okay, so they've got a bank account information. So let me just go and delete that from there. And because I've only got a rule on any changes, not on additions or deletes, if I go back here and if I look at anything under my user ID that I'm logged in at, what you'll notice is that, yes, this is the pure 20 CFRL information. There is a delete here, okay, that has occurred. So I've deleted it on that, I've deleted it for that customer. But if I jump back out and look at my managers tool, for any alerts of what's going on, you can see that there is no alerts that have gone on here today in regards to that. All right, so if I jump back into this one here, I need to actually add some bank account details in. Okay, the record's in there. Same thing, nothing fired off from alert perspective, but jumping back in, my ID correctly, you'll see that the addition's been created here. So this is me adding in the new record there. All right, so last change. So I want to go on and make a change to this information. So we can see that the information's been updated. Go back in. Wait for it to load. Now load for me. All right. Am I now having the demons? Oh, there we go. So, sorry, it just takes about a minute to load through sometimes. So what we'll notice, if it allows me to scroll across, okay, so that we've made a change. This is the key information that was changed. So we've changed the customer's bank account and the BSB number of what's going on. You can see that who made the change, when the change was made, what environment, all the core information that goes onto it. So if I jump then to my alerts, we'll see that, okay, so here's one that's fired off. It's sent at the time in regards. In the background, I have hopefully received an email. It was flying through. An email notification will have gone out. But you can select this record. With the email notification, what you can then do is go, okay, I've received a notification of what's gone on. What is the change? You can go in now and go, okay, yep, that is a change that I know should have occurred. I'm happy with. You can change the status on this and say, yep, I've reviewed it, no further action. Okay, reviewed, action required. So then you can start a workflow of what needs to go on. At the same time, you can go in here and add comments and say, you know, if it is something that has been approved, you can attach an email that you've sent or documentation that's linked to it. You can put in some text of what's going on. So standard JD Edwards functionality about doing attachments and saying that that's all okay, or if it's not. So what is the key thing out of this is, yes, fraud is on the increase with organizations. Yes, fraud circumstances have occurred with JD Edwards customers in this region. With the world that we are changing to because of COVID, it is something else that we need to think about. So there is solutions out there that can help you be more proactive with this. You can have full tracking of what's going on. You can then take it to a next step of having alerting in regards to that and receiving an email saying that, oh yes, that this has happened. So if not, you can just have it set up as a report. You can take this a step further, and I do want to show you that you can then, if I jump back to home, you can start building E1 pages with dashboards using, here we go, using Reports Now Mobi solution as one option. It is not, yeah, anyway. So you can then start building dashboards so you can instantaneously see the same way that you can use as with UX1, your watch list inside of JD Edwards, seeing information that's going on. Just quickly, the email has come through, so it takes about 2 or 3 minutes. And what you can see is, yes, it notifies me as the person in control. You can have it as an individual, you can have a group of people, you can have a distribution list that will get the notification based on the rule. So you can have multiple rules set for different areas. So you could have rules set up for supply versus inventory versus maintenance versus different parts of finance. And this is notification, and it then takes me straight back into JD Edwards. So yeah, sorry, while that loads. So hopefully that's given people an insight into ways that they can use JD Edwards and Q Software to help protect their system from fraud.
So just a couple of quick questions from earlier that people put in. So one was from an analytics perspective. Well, there's two here. One was, so they will work on any specific browsers, even Firefox. Analytics and insights, the remote worker part is just a small section of the insights. So if you are already using, if you are using ERP analytics, you can get that extended out to being insights, and the remote worker analytics is part of that. The maps can be zoomed in by country and region, yes. So you can see, say, the breakdown on a country. From a geographic perspective. And do you have a guide how to install and configure fraud detector? Yes, we do. So that's available. So we can reach out from that aspect. So the main things off the back of this, and there was a couple of things I wanted to highlight. This session is there are some stuff that would have normally been covered in our innovation symposium, particularly the content from Gary and Bob, because that's one of the key things that we have the symposium, and why we put it in this date now is that it's a couple of weeks after Collaborate. With the changes now, and Gary highlighted on one of his previous screens that Lyle's keynote. So if you go to that section from the Innovation Week request, there's 3 keynotes in there. One is Lyle's, the second one is one from Bob and Gary, and the third one is from two guys called Jeff Erickson and Neil Pugh that talk a little bit more on the technology perspective. So they were the, three of the keynotes that would normally have been at Collaborate, the event that's held in America in April. So the focus from Symposium would be to introducing that information, talking about it, and then having two JD Edwards keynotes. One, and unfortunately this year I was very excited this year that we were, had aligned, for those that have attended before, Daryl Shakespeare was coming back to talk to us more on particularly on the orchestration front. But that initially we had Lyle was penned in himself to come and present. So I was very excited, but unfortunately the world has changed on us and we can't do with it. So so if there aren't any other, I haven't seen any other, I'm just quickly looking, any other questions coming through from people? No. So just quickly to wrap up, if I have missed any questions, I will go through the whole list again. These recordings will be both sent out. One highlight is, and it's a thing that we are excited about, and I know it's great to hear customer success, and there's two things out of it is, if you go to Learn JDE, and JD Edwards themselves are always excited to hear customer success stories and any case studies that we've done. And it's something that we reach out to people to talk about. And it's not just from a Fusion 5 aspect that we're after this, it's JD Edwards themselves are really excited and really like to hear about customer success stories and case studies of where they've embrace some of the functionality and new enhancements that the guys ran through with today, or just in 9.2 themselves, and they're all available on Learn JDE. The second one from our aspect is great, and it shows that partners working together. That Circle K is done with through Red for International, which Fusion 5 is a part of. So it's really great to see the alignment, and that's one of the key things out of this, and the key things from things like the Symposium is it's not just a couple of individuals, it's about organizations all around the world working together to make more efficient and effective ways that people can use JD Edwards application and anything that sits around JD Edwards application that's their ERP. So just to close out from my side, Gary pointed out to some of these, but there is so much information online. LinkedIn, gentlemen like Ward Calls are posting all the time. So have a look on there. There's JD Edwards has their own YouTube, Twitter. Learn JDE is probably a key thing to jump onto. A couple of the upcoming events, yes, there is the JD Edwards event next month's request from the 8th for that week. I'm doing a presentation on what's Australia time. I think it's like 2:15 in the morning to align with the American sessions. But we because of everything that's going on, we do want to run another one of these. It will be on Wednesday, the 19th of August. We'll have some different content and some different speakers. So if people are interested in seeing something, I would like to learn a little bit more, please have a look at that. The other thing is every month from July through to October, we'll be releasing education and training packs. So please look out for that. At this stage, I still have my fingers crossed that in some form our symposium will be running. I think it'll be more of, unfortunately, I won't be able to get my overseas keynotes on site in person because of the restrictions and travel from particularly from America. So we are working through ways that we can do and still run this event. So please keep it in your calendar. We'll be doing updates as we go along, but we still will be running this. It'll probably be a hybrid model of on site for the Australians and New Zealanders, and then bringing our keynotes and our overseas partners to you live on the big screen. So from the end of this, I just want to do a big thank you, obviously to the Fusion 5 presenters that joined me here today, but more particularly to both Gary and Bob. I apologise for my difficulties. The three of us were working busy behind the scenes while the other presentations are going on. I thank everyone for switching across and joining us for the sessions today. So please look out for any for the content that will come out. If you do have any questions, please reach out to me and we'll talk to that. But as you can see from all the information given you today, there is a roadmap and there is a plan for JD Woods into the future. So thank you to everyone attending. Thank you for everyone presenting. And hope everyone is safe and continues to be safe in this time at the moment. And I'll talk to you all later. Thank you.